Good evening. It's August 20th. There's a Board of Health meeting, and hereby call the meeting to order at 7:30. I will read the agenda for the meeting. At 7:30, we will be approving minutes from the meeting of June 18th and July 2nd. At 8 o'clock, there is a variance hearing for 73 Old Orchard Road. 8:30, a variance hearing for 7 Curve Street. At 9 o'clock, a variance hearing for 28 Great Rock Road. At 9:30, we have an appointment with the Planning Board, who unfortunately are not going to be here. However, we will at that time also be reviewing the appointment of a peer review consultant for the EHIR on the Abbey Road project. Under Chairman's business, and not at any particular scheduled time, is the EIR review for Abbey Road. Discussion of regulations for changes proposed by resident Frank Jenkins, which we will try to take between 7:30 and 8. Regulation review for a public hearing. The public hearing is on the 19th of September, and we must have the notice in by tomorrow. By Friday at noon.
It's tomorrow.
It is tomorrow, the 20th.
It's Friday, but tomorrow.
No, they got to be done by tomorrow. That we will be reviewing the new form of the health agent invoices, just a brief discussion on that. And we will be having a review of the need for a new contract for agent services. That is one that's been noted to be at 10 o'clock. And the agent's business, 185 Woodland Street, review of groundwater data. We will try to take that between 7:30 and 8. Douse Orchard Food Establishment permit status of a second clean bacteria test to be discussed. And other business, health resource suggestion outcome, Public Safety Committee, the board must appoint a member to that. Bats and rabies memorandum from the Department of Public Health, update on General Chemical, Framingham issue, a letter of 7/23/14. Any items for discussion at the September 3rd meeting, agenda items, and any items not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting, there being one, an appointment for a discussion of a project at 120 Nason Hill Road, and that also will try to be discussed between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. The first item that we tried to discuss between 7:30 and 8 o'clock was an appointment, commitment that I made to Mr. Jenkins, and that is a review of the potential regulation change for our well regulations, noting offset distance to an adjacent septic system that has higher treatment than normal. To that end, there is suggested language that was put together for the board to talk about. And this is a request by Mr. Jenkins, who has some property adjacent to a newly approved septic system, and the Board of Health regulations set distance offsets for wells to septic systems. In this case, the new septic system has a higher degree of treatment, has been granted variances because of that, and therefore might be called a less strong effluent. And Mr. Jenkins is asking if we might change our regulations for offset distance to a well to match those of Title V in the instance when there is greater treatment of the adjacent system effluent. So it's up for board discussion. I'd like to hear from either of you.
Okay, I'll go. So I like the idea of being able to acknowledge the different technology through the regulation. One concern I have is that often when this technology is applied in Sherborn, it's coupled with the variance to depth to groundwater beneath the septic system. I believe we often link some innovative alternative technologies with another variance. So there's already been some compensation for that improved quality of effluent, and I'm just not sure technically where the line is, or the science is, about what the resulting quality is, whether you're 1 foot, 2 foot, 5 feet above groundwater with an innovative alternative, and then how that would then translate into distance. So to me, that's just the part I don't know. I haven't had a chance to research that.
Yeah, I know our agent has been to some conferences in the recent future, meaning 2014, I was wondering if he had any input. He hasn't really had time to prepare for the question, but I was wondering if he had any input as to, with these alternative technologies, are there any things listed as far as Title V that are recent?
If I may, the state DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, they have an experimental station down on Cape Cod. So they test new innovative alternative technologies on a regular basis. We would have to look at what the reports show at the end. Some have been tested elsewhere, might be other states that the state has reviewed and utilized that information. So for them to get an approval letter, and that's how this works, from the state of Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, the Boston office has personnel, or they have personnel over there that look over these alternative technologies. But to answer the question at hand about the 2 feet to groundwater versus maybe 4 or 5 feet, I don't know if there's any conclusions to that question, but it could be looked into.
Okay, thank you. My own view is that we're talking about here about horizontal distance, not vertical. And you're absolutely right. When you use innovative alternative technology, you are granted the relief of 4 feet to groundwater to 2 feet, or alternatively, you can have the size of the leaching field if you can maintain the 4 feet. So you're right. There is already, I mean, they're already giving relief, but here we're looking at a horizontal distance to a well, and whether or not, and obviously the treatment is in that horizontal distance, and it is a more processed effluent. I might point out, this discussion is just whether or not to put it into the hearing for
Right.
discussion,
Well, here's
public
my-
hearing, not to reach a decision.
Well, here's my concern, is that I think maybe this is too simple a statement, and that maybe there's another layer that would go with it to address how you balance having granted other variances that already acknowledged that, and then to add the distance change and how that works. And I realize the vertical and horizontal, but they're all somewhat related. You're talking about treatment horizontally or dilution horizontally, whatever it may be. The more soil in between, presumably the more treatment is the, basic idea. So I just don't know if we can state it this simply or not. I don't know. So the question is, and I'd be happy to consider it because I think it's a great concept to include. The question is, if we do this, is it just not quite right?
Well, I get, excuse me a sec, Chris, I'd like to hear from you on that, but the point I would make is, this is relief only to to Title V distances, which, are used routinely in all cases. So I don't think we wouldn't be treading new territory here. I mean, this is territory already tread by other towns and done in other circumstances. But Chris, you had a thought?
Yeah, again, for Mark, our health agent, my assumption is organic soils would handle effluent and process it naturally more than a sand material, whereby I would imagine, or is that incorrect?
If I could, the organic soils have been tested, especially what we used to call our subsoil, the orangey material below the topsoil. Now we letter them A, B, and C. Your B layer, which has a higher concentration of organics from the C layer, which is lower, they have found that treatment can be better there. As it relates to other types of soil, yes, I went to a conference last year, and there was a professor from UMass Amherst who indicated that your soils that are slower typically have more organics as well, versus like a sand do treat effluent at a greater degree than a sand material would.
So with that in mind, if we look at the results of the Cape sandy gravel testing, we should be able to apply those to our town, which isn't as sandy, with some reassurance that the effluent's getting handled and processed better.
If I may again, what they do down the Cape is they actually build the fields with various types of soils. So they're not utilizing the natural
Strictly
soil.
sand.
They,
Okay.
they control it by putting in till materials, sand materials. So
Okay.
they should have some information as it relates to those variable soils.
We'll
and-
have to look at that,
Yes.
as to what they're bringing in.
So just on the administrative side, so away from the technical, question is, do we leave it in for this next public hearing and then try to, if we have enough information, adjust it at that time with modifications? Or do we hold it for yet another public hearing with other changes? That's
Yeah,
my question.
Thank you for bringing
is-
us back that, because frankly, the vote tonight is simply whether or not to add it to the hearing.
Right,
And so
and
I-
that's my only concern is, are we really ready for this? Do we understand
Why
it
don't we
enough?
just take a vote and see if we're going to add it to the hearing, because that's all we're talking about, all right?
Okay,
Okay, so I'd like a motion to add this possible consideration to the hearing for September 17th.
so moved.
I'll second
Moved and
that.
seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions?
I'm still thinking.
No, I'm fine with it.
Fine, we can add it, and we'll discuss it at
You're
that time.
in favor?
Yes.
Okay, that's 3-0 that will be added. Yes, sir.
Quick question, will we have results of the date that's worked up the Cape?
We will have whatever additional research might be available at that time. We will be taking public comment at that time on the issue. That's what the public hearing is about.
But we'll have some input from the Cape's testing, right?
If we're able to, we have rather a full plate of things before us between now and then, which is part of my concern. I don't know how you feel, but I could see that if we don't feel we're ready, that maybe it doesn't get voted on at that point or approved or what have you, and we hold it to another time. Because I would like to visit the issue and look at it. I just want to make sure that we do it right.
I
So-
understand, I buy that, I just want to, it was a year ago when I was in here when I first raised the question, and I just want to make sure that we can move it along.
Oh, I think there was another question related, but this idea was pretty recent in your
This
recent
question was
email.
raised a year ago when.
No, it was raised when that adjacent system was installed, when the
Oh, it
variance was
was.
agreed. Yeah, tangential to the conversation
Oh.
about the variance hearing.
But since
for
the others
adjacent-
had alerted neighbors, done all the proper
Yeah.
procedural paperwork, and
Oh, I know the issue of distance was
we
raised,
put
but
that
not of
aside.
the-
But I would say as long as our health agent's attending conferences and updating us on a semi-regular basis, is that a DEP update, or?
DEP, annual conferences are coming up this fall and mid-fall.
Is it possible to, for Mr. Jenkins' purposes, to request that when DEP comes up with some conclusions, even initial, they could forward them to you?
That would be okay. We could ask DEP to do that.
Thank you. We're going to try to squeeze a lot in before 8 o'clock, and so the people that were here next were 120 Nason Hill Road. There's a building application for review. I understand there's a question of the development of a basement room with a bath.
If I can give the board an update, the builder, Chris Lundberg, is here, and the applicants, I forget your names, I apologize, but I do have an application here. They're here to listen in on, it's Kenneth and Amy Smith, or was that previous?
Carter and Sarah Petty.
Thank you, Carter and Sarah Perry. I know it's in, there it is. Thank you. So what they're looking to do, first of all, they own a house at 120 Nason Hill Road, and the house was built when we didn't have septic design plans back years ago. So with that said, they're looking, they have a 9-room house, 4 bedrooms. I have the plans if you want to look at those. And they're looking to remodel their basement. In doing so, they were planning to, I believe it's replace an existing room and make it a recreation room, is that correct? Okay. So, and then what they would like to do is add a full bathroom to the side. So I talked to Chris previously, the builder, and oh, you have those, good. And you can see there's the original design plan. It wasn't, it's not existing. It's
Sketch,
original
understand.
sketch. And then there's 2 other proposals, because we talked about the fact that usually a bathroom within a room area could possibly cause it to be used for something more than a rec room, such as a master bedroom. With that said, he has given us these three proposals. I did explain too that usually when we don't have a design flow, we look at least minimum to do a deed recording to indicate that this 10th room is not considered part of the room count when it comes to design flow. So,
And 10 may not be used as a bedroom.
thank you, they may not be used as a bedroom.
So the two proposals, one, it looks like, it seems like there's a captive bathroom to the space. The other seems to have a slight offset, and the other adds a hallway going somewhere. The hallway goes past the mechanical area and past the bathroom to a dead end.
Yes.
You understand, but, so it's, well, it's a distinction without a difference.
Right.
So I think really the question is just whether or not this could be permitted with a deed recording in any fashion, because the hallway is simply just turning the door.
That's why I'm bringing it to the board for
Okay.
review, for that reason.
It's my expectation in the past, we've approved these with a deed recording, and typically at times required a Title V inspection of the septic system to prove that it's operating.
They do have a Title V, if I may. It was dated 2010. 2010 Title V inspection was completed, and it did pass.
Okay.
For what?
For the sale of the home, it was a full Title V inspection.
And
Four-bedroom.
certified as a four-bedroom house, yeah.
For the existing, they don't know the design flow, so it was for the existing house.
How
but
old
they
is the
can't
house?
see.
I believe it was built in 1966.
Yeah. Just before we started getting plans. Okay.
And it looks like there are windows in the bathroom, but not elsewhere in the basement? Okay.
And bulkhead and electric pan.
And although state housing code, you can have a bedroom without windows, but we don't typically see that here, so. Right, I don't know that the halls, the different hall configurations really.
The hall doesn't accomplish anything, really.
No.
It's nice to be able to call it a hall and not say it's a bathroom as
Right.
part of the room, but I think it's the same animal.
Have we ever had this before, this
Yeah,
exact situation?
Well, we've had a lot of basement rooms
Right.
with bathrooms for supporting offices, et cetera.
Right, and is it, maybe someone could explain on this. So here's the rec room area, and there's something closed off here, but it's open through here?
It is open through there. The prior owners had sort of a half wall there. It was just kind of a built-in bar area, but like only about 3 feet long, not long enough to do anything.
And are the stairs open? Somewhat?
The stairs are partially open. They are enclosed at the top, and then they are open at the bottom with handrails.
Okay, and then this area is storage or finished or?
It's finished, but currently not used. This area over here is unfinished, and there's a small storage area that's unfinished over here.
Okay. In some respects, that makes me see this is not really a bedroom, it's a bathroom off of a large multifunctional space rather than a
Right.
That's
bedroom.
certainly the intent.
Okay. Do I have a motion to direct the agent that, that we can approve the plan with the deed recording, noting that it's not to be used in the room count and it's not to be ever used as a bedroom?
So moved?
Second that?
Moved and second. Is there any further discussion?
No.
Mark, that's the right form?
We do have a form
Yeah,
available.
okay, but I'm saying
Oh.
that's the right language. That's what we usually
Correct.
do.
We have the,
Would we like to clarify that any of the plans is suitable?
Yes,
Okay,
Even the,
yes.
even the first one. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, you're approved. You do have to get the deed recording. There's a process and a form for that. You will not get approval until we have proof that the deed recording is on record.
I can provide it tomorrow afternoon.
And so if we have 12 minutes to slip in 185
Thanks.
Woodland Street, we'll try to do that.
okay, and if,
And Mr.,
well, we have
okay.
the design engineer here, Michael, and we also have a report from Peter Fletcher. He was the soil evaluator on the site. What Peter did was provide us a full report of the previous testing as well as his findings and some information based on Frimpter. And his most recent information, the addendum, is using a 20% exceedance factor when looking at the Michael Frimpter 1980 report. And so we've seen this before under our regulations, section 5.1B. We do allow for this when it's used. It's called the Open File Report 80-1205. Other adjustment values may be allowed by board on a case-by-case basis. And we actually have seen, just as of last fall, the 20% exceedance utilized. I did tell Mr. Fletcher that we would present it to the board and the designers here if you'd like to, ask questions, but I don't see an issue with it. I feel, excuse me, that it's appropriate based on the comparison well, and actually as an engineer in the audience, we had the same discussion. When you're looking at the Frimpter method, you're looking at a comparison ratio. And when you're looking at the comparison ratio, you're trying to compare the most difficult part of the formula to determine is the range of the site for a whole year, where the observation well because it's been studied by the U.S. Geological Survey for several years. What we found is he used the Concord 167 well, and the range at that well is 6.03. The site range that you get on a 20% exceedance on the chart within Frimpter shows 8.25, so they're within reasonable comparison, if anything, a little bit not as conservative as it possibly could be for comparison. So with that said, and that was probably the closest that Peter could find on a terrace, where this was at the end of Weston Ave, and it kind of goes over to Woodland. It's that large terrace. It even goes down further when you cross over Washington. So, and then it just drops. And so it created its own situation, and that's why the detailed report.
Okay, Mark, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand, because you're talking about a 20% exceedance. In
Yes.
the past, haven't we dealt with 5 and 10?
Usually we deal with 5. That's what we've been trained to do through the soil evaluation course, so
So
the
now
board has the opportunity.
we're all the way
to
up to 20.
We've allowed it before. And the
Understand.
reason I don't see a problem with it because of the comparison well. The
Okay.
comparison well's range is 6 point, whatever it was, it's 6 plus, and the range she's using off the Frimpter chart is 8 point plus.
So you're recommending the board accept the 20%?
The 20% exceedance
The 20%
for
on
180.
this site?
Yes, for the 185 Woodland on the addendum provided by Peter Fletcher on July 22nd, 2014.
Okay. Comment from the board?
Well, it sounds like there is some added conservative element built in by the numbers you just mentioned, so sounds reasonable to me.
I don't have anything.
And based on the particulars of that location, as you described it. So.
There a motion from the board to direct that the agent may accept a groundwater determination as presented by the consultant for 185 Woodland Street.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen?
Thank you.
Okay, we have 7 minutes before an 8 o'clock variance hearing. Pardon me? Minutes, let's do minutes, thank you, Alan. Let's first note the meeting minutes of July 2nd, 2014. This was a afternoon meeting. I'm going to take exception to everything that's written after it says the meeting adjourned at 5:10. Ellen took additional notes of conversations after the adjournment, but I do not believe they are part of the meeting because the meeting had been adjourned, and with the agreement of the board members, I don't think it should be there.
I guess my question would be, is it useful for future review to have it in there? As a question.
Right, that's what I was thinking about it.
If that's the case, then I would just ask you to take off the final sentence where it says the board members left the room at 5:35, actual time of adjournment, because in fact the meeting...
No, we adjourned at 5:10.
We adjourned at 5:10.
Yeah, I agree with that,
Okay,
so.
we're taking off the last sentence there then, and leaving the rest for historical value?
I'm okay with that. I want to thank Ellen for her very detailed notes. There was a lot going on. and
There was, yeah.
Thank you, Ellen.
Okay,
Ellen and I discussed a couple of typos. One was, I came in after item 1, so, and she had it in her notes as
Okay.
2-0, so that, and then there was
Fine.
just a wordo. on-
first item should be
Three.
2-0, not
Sure,
3-0.
sure, sure.
And the other was what?
On number 3, and then the second paragraph, the second line of the second paragraph, of health, and he asked the administrator, and cross out was asked.
Oh, yeah, too many words, okay.
Okay,
It's just,
that's
yeah,
it.
that's editorial. Okay, motion to approve as amended,
So moved?
Second time.
moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Meeting minutes of, what'd I do with them? June 18th, 2014. Ask for a motion to approve as written.
So moved?
Second that.
Any agenda, any additions, corrections?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Just getting my stuff lined out here. Well, regulation review for the public hearing for 9/17, I guess we basically have that settled. We have basically, I guess, now 4 items, 2 in Wells and one in perk rate and 1 in for mounding. Are we in agreement on that?
Yes.
Okay. Ellen had an issue, we've got 4 minutes. Ellen had an issue with the fact that the part about offset distance to a well, that we're not treating that properly in the structure of the wording of the regulation. Ellen, what's your issue there?
It's written pretty much as how a variant, you're granting a variance. It's not written as a regulation. You're just saying, the wording just has to be changed.
Okay, let's look at the one under well location, item D, where you have the added language, unless protected by bollards, boulders. Are you suggesting we simply just make that another section?
Yes.
It says, you know, if the well is protected by bollards, boulders, fixed curbing at least 8 inches high, and in no case closer than, then, you know, it shall be no case closer than 5 feet to the driveway.
And it can be a D1.
Fine, let's make it a D1. Similarly, well, now, on the distance to a adjacent well with a treatment system, but looking at well distance in 10.1D, that is already a separate piece. So do you have an issue with how that's put there? I mean, it's item D, it's not part of C or anything.
Yeah.
Is 8 inches the appropriate height?
It'll sure keep
What's a
it.
curb height?
Curb height, a typical curb is 6.
That's my question.
Well, we're looking at protection of a wellhead. We can discuss it and change it at the hearing, or you can change it now. You're better with, happy with 6 or 4? Or?
Is there anyone with
I would have,
more knowledge than
I had
us?
an issue about the 8, because if something's 8 inches high, but a pickup truck is backing up and has a big overhang and go over the 8, then it's not really protection. So I don't know if we want to
No,
just say.
it's 5 feet beyond that. The wellhead is still 5 feet beyond that curb.
I think what she's saying.
Well, that
the
wasn't
wheel-
clear to me, that where that protection goes. Is it immediately around, or?
The wheel hits the curb, there's still an overhang.
Okay, so
from
you're
it.
suggesting those bollards,
Head.
boulders are right at the edge of the driveway, and then the well is beyond.
Oh, I see what you're
it?
saying. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's not clear at all.
Or the boulder could be
Okay.
right next to the well, and that would protect it, if it was a big enough boulder. So, one way, because how are we ever going to address all situations? Maybe unless protected by blah, blah, and not specify a height.
Right.
Fine.
And then
Or that.
evaluate it at the time of whether it looks like it'll really offer
Okay.
protection.
Okay,
It could
so,
be it could be a downslope, it could be
yeah,
a curb,
you're right. If it's an 8-inch curb and it's a foot from the thing, the truck's gonna hit it anyway.
Yeah.
backing up, you know.
Or I guess we should just say bollards or boulders at least 3 feet high. 30 inches.
And then it could be, those could be anywhere as long as they're, well, but then what if someone comes up with another thing that offers protection but isn't
Yeah.
a bollard or a boulder?
Okay.
Or of
That's
equally,
my, a wall, just
yeah, right, or equal protection.
how
Okay,
to,
unless protected in a manner approved by the Board of Health.
Yeah,
yep,
How's
good.
that, okay?
Yes. Love
Got that new language, Ellen?
Yeah.
Unless protected in a manner approved by the Board of Health. Good. Do them case by case. I like that.
And that way people can, what if they want to make a pretty
Present.
wall and a garden and something?
Sure.
Now, I guess, Ellen, you had an equal issue with the way we treated the mounding?
Well, I just wasn't mounding.
Yeah, the 5-foot
No.
fill? No? Okay,
No,
that language you're okay with.
that
We're ready
you're
to
all
go to
set
press.
with. Yeah.
Okay.
It was just this, and
Okay, so we're ready to go to press with this, and that's what will be posted for the hearing on the 17th.
And what time? I forget.
I forget to. I think we made it
I think it's 8, might be 8:30.
Oh,
8 or 8:30.
It's
Oh, that's-
8:30 because there's a variance hearing at 8.
Okay, it's 8:30.
okay. Also because I just saw that the planning board is planning to have
saw
its
that.
kickoff meeting
Yeah,
the same night.
I saw that.
And
That's
I
too
would-
bad.
Guess that people who are interested in the master plan for the town might also be interested in this, and then they're at odds. But,
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
but if their meeting is done in an hour and a half, people can come on
Noting
over.
the hour is 8 o'clock, we have a scheduled variance hearing for 73 Old Orchard Road. This is a septic replacement plan. Paul Saulnier is the presenting engineer. Good evening, Paul.
Evening, everyone.
Hi.
Plan for us?
Before it starts, I'll say
You have green cards?
I have all the green cards, all the abutter notification requirements have been met.
Okay. Do we have any abutters? We don't even have the owner. Then I'm not going to bother agonizing people through the procedure, but we'll, thank you.
Old Orchard, yeah, I've done probably a dozen up there. 73 Old Orchard. The road is considerably higher than the site, and the existing septic tank was way out here, and the leach field was somewhere in here. When we started digging on the site, obviously because of the well out front, that the only place is back here. Conservation was concerned that there might be some wetlands back here, so we didn't go way down. When we started digging, we went 11 feet. This is entirely filled, the backyard. So we moved over here into the woods and found some existing material under 4.5 feet of fill. And then at the time, I didn't have the property surveyed, so I thought the property line was about 20 feet off. It turns out to be more like 30. But then we moved our way back here and found more fill. So the system itself, to get in at least 4 feet of naturally occurring material, was to tuck it as close to this property line as possible. So with all of that, the variances that we're requesting are all from the Sherborn rules and regs. And
Where's the swell, Paul?
the wells here. Oh, there, it's considerably far away. It's more than 200 feet away.
There's a statement to that effect?
Yeah.
At the
here.
bottom left, about 5 statements up.
So would you like me to read the list of variances?
Yep.
Okay, excuse me. Under Sherborn Rules and Regs, Section 5.1D, to allow the soil absorption system to be designed on the basis of one perk test in compliance with Title V as it is a replacement, due to the fact that the fill was over 5 feet deep in the areas that were available for testing. As you know, we're not allowed to go in a hole deeper than 5 feet. So we were lucky to get the one, actually. Would you like me to read them all?
Yeah.
Okay, under section 7.1.
A.
A. Thank you.
Ellen took care of it.
It's on the,
To allow the SAS soil absorption system to be designed without the additional capacity for a garbage grinder due to the site constraints, most of the area being filled to a depth of 11 feet.
Can I just say something on that? That's not needed.
It's not needed.
That's not a needed variance because that's allowed in the regulations,
Oh, really?
right?
that's correct.
Okay,
It's just the
it's in the
plan will
reg-
not be released until we get the deed
Deed
recording.
recording is required.
But it is a variance unless there's, and it needs a deed recording.
No, it's not a variance.
We've allowed, it's very confusing when
Regulations
we
have been
changed it.
changed.
You want to take that out?
It's not needed.
It allows plans, say if that was the only waiver that was needed, we changed that a year ago or so, and I'm still a little confused by it.
2012.
But a plan can get processed quicker if that's the only issue.
They're not required to design for a garbage grinder.
Right, but don't they have to have a deed recording?
Yes.
A deed recording's required, yes, but it's not a variance. That variance is no
Oh,
longer.
okay, I'm sorry, then it's a condition of the plan approval, but not a
Right.
variance.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
That's the distinction, okay,
All right,
yeah.
thank you. The third, or now the second variance is under section 8.0.1 to allow the bottom of the soil absorption system to be 4 feet above high groundwater versus 5 in compliance with Title 5 in order to avoid the construction of retaining walls on the east and south sides of the soil absorption system that's here and here. Another foot would have required that. We can't meet the setbacks. Again, pushing it this way then gets us into the areas where there's not enough soil, so that's the reason for that one. Then under section 10.1, to allow, what?
A.
A.
No one added A, what can I tell you?
To allow the soil absorption system to be 100 feet off the uphill well versus 125 feet, to avoid building the soil absorption system way down in the slope. And again, the soil absorption system is about 15 feet below the well,
Vertical.
vertically, elevation-wise. Then section 10.2, no A or B?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
Straight up.
Straight up. To allow the soil absorption system to be 10 feet off the property line with number 77 Old Orchard Road versus 20 feet required. To minimize construction in the fill area, property lines were established by Paul D. Simone, registered land surveyor.
Okay, Mark, do you have any observations on this?
The observations are correct. It's described by Paul Solonier, the engineer. This site was very difficult. I would recommend approval of the waivers as requested.
Any board comments?
I was just going to ask a question on behalf of the abutter, even though they're not here, so perhaps they're not concerned, but the extra 10 feet, does that make much of a difference on their property as best you can tell? Well, septic, how large their lot is, anything like that?
No, I mean, we meet all the minimum setbacks to their property. This entire area is heavily wooded, and we are saving the largest 22-inch oak there, so other than clearing some underbrush and one larger tree way back on this property, I don't think there'll be any visual impacts.
Okay, no visual, and then that extra 10 feet is, it's not a very narrow lot. Do we have any sense there?
Well, the
Unlikely,
one
or-
statement that, if I may, that Paul placed down there, and I think it helps to understand the 10 feet, is that there is no other wells within 200 feet as shown from. So
Okay.
Paul, I guess, correct, the lot next door, that well is more than 200 feet away.
Okay.
So I think the septic to septic isn't the issue, but the well would be, so that is a good question.
Okay,
And additionally, this is a 2-acre zone, required 200-foot
Okay.
frontage plus 200-foot lot width at the house, so
all right.
they're wide lots.
okay, good.
Okay, so I ask for a motion to approve a variance to section 5.1D to allow the soil absorption system to be designed on the basis of 1 perk test, which would only be accomplished because of the amount of fill.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's approved. Ask for a motion to approve variance to section 8.0.1 to allow the bottom of the soil absorption system to be 4 feet above seasonal groundwater versus the 5 feet as required.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Three coughs makes an aye. That's three ayes. Variance to ask for a motion of variance to section 10.1A to allow the soil absorption system to be 100 feet off of the uphill on-site well versus the 125 feet required.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I just wanted to mention that this is something we'll often consider more for someone, for the property owner when the distance changes to their own well, as opposed to a neighbor's well, so.
Right. Ask for a motion to approve variance to section 10.2 to allow the soil absorption system to be 10 feet off of the property line with 77 Old Orchard feet versus the 20 feet required to minimize, and this is being done to minimize construction infill.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved.
It's
And
approved
that's all of them.
additional to the garbage grinder.
Yeah, I was just going to
That's
comment to
further.
the board, since 3 depots are there, but due to the circumstances of the soils that were found, one of the depots was placed outside, but I don't see the need for the waiver. The attempt was made and those soil tests were utilized in placing the system. We usually say 3 depots
Right.
around
Yeah,
the
but we just
system, but
approved the one.
we approved the 1 perk, but the 3 depots we required 2.
I see.
But I don't see the need to do that here because 3 depots were conducted.
Yeah, okay.
Just the placement of the system couldn't be within the 3 based on the soil types.
Yeah, okay, and the depots are more to establish groundwater than they are soil types because you're perking at a higher
I would
level.
say both.
Okay.
It's important for
Right,
me.
I'm going to say this variance hearing is closed. Is the plan ready for approval?
Yes, I recommend approval of the plan, and as noted, this plan also was a survey for the property lines.
Okay, I ask for a motion to approve, to approve the plan as presented with a requirement for a deed recording
Before the plan can be released.
before the plan can be released. The deed recording to note the,
Prohibit the garbage,
to note the, to prohibit a garbage grinder.
prohibit the installation of a garbage grinder.
Okay, prohibiting the installation of a garbage grinder.
So moved.
Right.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You're done?
I don't have the stamp sheet. I can go get them if you want to do it now.
We're going to have a lot of time.
You want me to go get the stamps?
Yeah.
Just don't know how much noise it's going to make with the...
Might as well,
Go ahead and stamp, we'll get it done. Move on.
yeah, get your stamps and we'll do, of course, we'll do it during the meeting.
I'll try to be careful with the microphone.
Elliot, you know where the switch is for this? Would you mind turning that off for a while? Because it's very cold up here.
Okay.
And we'll probably turn it back on later.
Whatever. You yell and I'll do.
Thank you.
I didn't yell, it was just just a civil request, Elliot. Okay,
Yes, perfect attendance.
yeah. I'm just lining stuff off here so I know I got it done.
Maybe we could do the Dow's Orchards in 15
Oh,
minutes.
that's good, yeah, when Mark gets back.
Yeah.
What's the health resource suggestion outcome? That's yours, Darrell?
Yeah.
No.
Ellen.
Ellen?
If you remember, it was a couple of meetings ago, there was an email from this Lynette Zilio about adding the specimens to the...
To a website, and we said
website.
no.
No,
Yeah, we
you
looked
said-
further
you
into
said
it.
to look further into it, and I just wanted, so that the minutes, where it says, look further into it.
Oh, okay.
Now you can say that
It was-
Dr.
it-
Quinn researched it and...
It was linked to an attorney website, so
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
we're okay with not doing it.
Chris researched it, Dr. Chris Quinn researched it for us, and we're not going to do it, recommend it against. Here's a fun one. The town now has a public safety committee, and the public safety committee is made up of a whole bunch of different people, but one of them is an appointment of a Board of Health designee. So,
But it does say to represent us, as opposed to, I mean, it can be one of us, but it seems like from our audience of interested people, maybe there's somebody who'd like to represent us.
Well, it's
Well,
amended.
they already have two
Yeah,
designees, public at large.
yeah, this is not new. It's just
Yeah.
being amended.
it's being amended, but it should be.
No, I don't mean from the public at large, but it would be someone who might just come back and report to us, just as
Right.
in the past, I was the representative for the Board of Health on the Groundwater Protection Committee when I was not on the Board of Health.
But
So, or
Right.
do we
it
have
says
to be?
Board of Health designee from among the elected
Oh,
board
right,
members.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. Okay,
You're-
never
you're
mind then.
stuck. You're stuck.
Never
So
mind. Let's
you-
try.
You want to do this one?
Could you tell by me trying to find another way to do it that no?
Yeah, I could tell that. And,
I think we have a lot
and
going
doc- and
on
Dr.
at the
Dr.
moment.
Quinn, I know, has a very, very tight schedule, so it looks like there's only one out of three people left. So I will.
Is this where
I
Chris
will-
and I slide our
I
chairs
will-
backwards and you're the
no, I
volunteer?
will volunteer for this.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Ask for a vote of the board to approve Peter Liffenden as the Board of Health designee to the Public Safety Committee.
So moved.
Yeah, I'll second
Moved and
that.
seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's,
Aye.
Do we know how broad the public safety is going to go?
It's my understanding that it's hoped that this is a committee that will encompass, I think I understand this, encompass several committees. Traffic safety, public safety, emergency preparedness, I guess a whole bunch of stuff.
Council on Aging, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking for a really broad representation on this so that all facets of the town are touched without having to go from here to here to here to here to here.
Some of this,
Okay.
some of this overlaps with emergency planning.
It does, yeah.
That's dictated by the state, as Ellen will tell you. You know, serving underserved populations, Council on Aging would overlap because the outreach to elderly in case of an emergency or pandemic, mass vaccination program, so.
Right, and I guess because we are small, even the meeting that we attended with the fire chief and the
well, that was a
police
table.
officer, and, right, and so there are lots of things going on in town. How about, Peter, I would be willing to do this at I just have to get through, busy work period, and then I could weigh in. I have some of these duties as part of my job right now, so
Okay,
they're
well,
familiar
why don't you
topics,
leave
so
it?
I wouldn't mind, but I just can't do it right now.
Fine, so
Carol as an alternative.
believe me, and when you'd like to change it, let us know. All right?
Mhm.
Okay. So, that takes care of that. Mark, Douse Orchards Food Establishment Permit,
Yes.
status of second clean bacteria test.
We issued a letter back in the middle of June based on water tests that are required. We sent them and we advised them that they would need an additional absent test on total coliform bacteria. Ellen and I have reviewed this, and it's on the agenda because that second test hasn't been submitted. My suggestion is to send them one additional letter, send it certified mail to make sure they received it, and just advising them that, this is past due, and it's up to the board on the time, but I would say it's reasonable to expect that 10 to 14 days would be fine, because the labs can usually do a bacterial test within 2 days. So I would
And
think
they
if
have to, so, yeah.
yeah.
So this is on a drinking well.
Yes, it's on, they and their orchards will start becoming very active as it relates to the water supply for the press mill very soon, probably mid-September, because the apples will be ready
Of
for
course.
pressing. So that's why I'd say 10 days seems reasonable because
Okay, have you had contact with them on
I
this?
talked with him about this during the last food inspection. I don't know, where the missing line is. Maybe it's been done, just not submitted. To give him the benefit of the doubt, I'd suggest one additional letter.
Okay, would you and Ellen put that letter together for my signature, and we'll send that registered? The board agree?
Yes.
It could be hand-delivered if you want to.
Or hand delivered? Okay.
Whatever, in that way, more discussion.
Sure. Okay. Right. Just blazing through this stuff. Bats and rabies memorandum from the Department of Public Health.
That was
Would that be
timely.
you, Chris?
Yeah, it seems they did this blast email. Ellen received it in our office and forwarded it to us because bats are becoming more active based on the babies are getting older and getting adventuresome and temperature changes, so it's not unusual to see more bat activity. It's a 2-page DPH report delineating the concerns when you don't know if you've been bit or a child's been bit by a bat, but the bat is found within the room. And it gives some guidelines as to what to do to try to capture so that the bat can be euthanized and tested. I know there's some debate on that approach, but whereby some would want to save the bat and release. My experience is once bats are released, they tend to reappear right back where they were found the first time. So, but it's a nice memorandum outline.
So I was curious if it's possible to be bitten by a bat and not be able to tell,
Absolutely.
find a puncture, nothing?
Well, not to feel it necessarily. Or if it's in the case of a baby, while it's sleeping, certainly wouldn't be able to verbalize that. So absolutely, those cases do arise. And, the baby has to be given the immune globulin plus start the rabies post-exposure series. Absolutely, if the bat's found in a baby's room.
So how do you recommend we publicize this?
Ellen, what do you think? Does it get linked, or how many questions are we having on,
We haven't
Bat
received
issues.
any, other than,
other than the one?
yeah.
Well, I would say if it becomes, if we get a couple calls, link it. Otherwise, note that it's available. These things come around every couple of years, and it just came out August 5th from the state, so it's nice to
But
recognize
I'm
it.
wondering if there wouldn't be some way to get it into the press, because it's pretty passive to put it on a website and hope somebody maybe goes there.
Well, Ellen's just saying we haven't received a lot of calls, right?
Right.
We haven't received any calls.
Haven't received any calls.
No, it's just for information.
Okay.
essentially.
It's more of an outline so that,
So you would keep it for reference if someone did call,
Someone did call.
you could make this
Exactly.
available to them.
Yes.
Okay. Next scheduled variance hearing is at 8:30. It's in 7 minutes, and we'll be doing some other things. Under Chairman's Business, item 4, health agent invoices. I just wanted to relate that the last invoice that was sent to accounting and through the selectman's office, the detail that we presented was quite satisfactory to accounting and selectmen. If we can continue that, I think we have a more definitive accounting of those expenditures, and totally satisfying to the auditors and the accounting department. Mark, you don't have any trouble continuing invoicing in that same manner?
I do not have any problem
Okay.
doing that.
It was mentioned to me by David Williams that, going forward, would not be necessary to attach the log copies. I just thought I'd just advise the board of that. I don't believe it takes any action on the board's part, but we had been looking to make sure that the documentation was more thorough, and we have done that. And I think we're in a good place on that.
But you're going to continue to maintain the log and,
The logbook is reporting more than an invoice. It gives the full details of the call or the email response or the work that was done that day and any discussion that might have occurred during the actual work that was completed.
okay, so that'll still be there to
Yes, it-
refer
Well,
to
and- yeah,
as-
and the-
It's great reference.
Yeah, and the invoice will still link to the logbook,
Mhm.
because the logbook's dated, the invoice is dated by date, so. But I think it's good that we got that additional detail and that it's not onerous to create that and get to that point. Better business. General Chemical in Framingham, note receipt of a letter of 7/23/14 regarding drilling activities. This is just I believe is a letter we got from the people doing the
activities.
site survey that they'd be doing additional drilling for monitor wells and such. I think the good news there is simply that there is continuing increased activity in that site.
In terms of evaluating, not more activity at that site in terms of handling chemicals.
No, it's been shut down
Right.
for a long time, but yeah, as far, more activity as far as evaluating the hazard and the risk and
Correct.
and tracing the contaminants in the soil, so. Any other comment on that?
No.
My brief conversation with the Framingham Board of Health chair is that perhaps the previous monitoring wells weren't in sites that were expected to have the underground flow. So I would imagine this is related to that, to make it a more complete assessment.
I would hope so, yeah. Just for general information, Roger Demler is, of the town, is following this on behalf of the Board of Health and keeping us up to date on, on developments. And obviously, we are on the information distribution list for anything that happens on that site. But so far, no news is good news, but they're making sure there's no bad news, I think, is what it's coming down to.
Does this need to be forwarded to Roger, or do we assume?
I assume Roger's gotten that. Okay. Well, clearly, we're going to end up having some recesses in this meeting because we're just not going to be able to fill all this time. We have a variance hearing scheduled for 8:30. It's close enough. For 7 Kerr Street, Douglas Brody is here. The presenting engineer is Paul Saulnier of Civilized Solutions. And I will ask, Ellen, did we get all the green cards back and
Yes.
notice of
Yes,
a butter notification? Thank you.
everything's been received. And it's a-
Okay. Because there is an applicant here but no butters, I am going to take you through the process that we do for a variance hearing. And it's a fairly straightforward process. Everybody gets a chance to say whatever they want to say at a particular time. Starts with the engineer presenting the plan and the overarching circumstances that require the variances. And those are then discussed by the board and the agent. The public then has an opportunity to comment on any of the variances, how they impact them, questions about what does this mean, what is it, and public questions and comments are taken and responded to. At the end of that period, the board then will vote the individual variances, whether or not to grant each individual variance, and if they're all granted, well, whether they're granted or not, the hearing is closed. If they have been granted and the plan is ready for approval, the plan is often approved at the same meeting. So the first step is the engineer presenting the plan and the overarching circumstances that require the variances. That's you, Paul.
Thank you.
Number 7 Curve Street off of Western Avenue. It's an existing 4-bedroom antique residence. It was previously served by first one cesspool, then a series of 3 more. So up until now, it's being treated by a series of cesspools, which of course convert to septic tanks miraculously. The issues with this site were wetlands at the lower end. As you know, that's quite a wet area down there between them and Western Avenue. And then just uphill, the site is shallow to ledge. So we ran into an issue of not enough soils and wetlands. So kept it at least 100 feet off the wetland area, which made conservation happy. Again, with no increase in flow due to the problems with perk rate as well as minimal soils and depth of groundwater. We're in need of several variances from Sherborn rules and regulations. So starting with section 5.2, to allow the soil absorption system to be designed on the basis of 25 minutes per inch versus the regs would say allow a 20-minute max for new construction. Under 8.0.1, to allow the soil absorption system to be 4 feet above the high groundwater versus 5, to reduce site impacts, and to keep the mound a maximum of 3 feet above grade. Under section 8.0.2, which requires at least 5 feet of natural grade occurring above high groundwater and the soil absorption system to be located in an area where groundwater is less than 5 feet below grade. We were not able to find that on this site.
I'm sorry, but I'm confused. So what are you doing in lieu of that? You're saying you can't meet 80?
We can't meet that.
You can't meet it at all?
Right. I should point out also, well, that comes up in the next one. The soil absorption system under section 10.01, to allow the soil absorption system to be 100 feet off the on-site uphill well versus the 25 feet required in order to 125, sorry, in order to avoid placing the septic in areas where there's less than 4 feet of permeable soil due to ledge, and to allow a minimum offset of 100 feet from the wetlands.
So you're balancing yourself.
Right, so we got 2 different things here confining this. And then finally, under section 10.2, to allow the soil absorption system to be 100 feet off the wetlands versus 125 due to the constrictions described above.
The board have any comments?
Well, first, just a minor one. I think for item 4, maybe that's 10.1A, similar to earlier. It seems to be.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Okay. And then, all right, looking at the site, you're squeezed between property lines, house, well, ledge. It's a tough site.
And wetlands.
You're right, and wetlands. So, as I look at it, I don't really see any other spot where it could easily go except, I mean, I don't know what this upper corner here is
More
like.
ledge.
Yeah.
More ledge,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's uphill.
So,
Down here, it was hidden.
and it's clearly an improvement over cesspools.
What do you do with the cesspools? Just fill them in? Or?
Yeah, they pump dry in.
Pump dry.
And if you take that 100-foot radius, you've got just a tiny spot
Yeah.
here. And there is a house right here, and the
Oh,
other well is
okay.
just on the other side of the house.
Okay, so location-wise, I don't think you could do better on this property. And is Conservation Commission, have they had a chance to
Oh, yeah.
review this? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Kept them happy with 100 feet.
mhm.
Chris?
No, nothing else.
Mark?
Another lot that is very difficult in respect to locating. I concur with what Darrow just noted.
Public comment, question. Mr. Brody, anything?
No, I'm very impressed.
By what?
I take it.
No, that's nice of you to say, thank you.
I'm enjoying the presentation.
Okay. Well, Hearing no objections, I ask for a motion to approve a variance to section 5.2 to allow the soil absorption system to be designed on a basis of 25 minutes per inch.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's approved. Ask for a motion to approve a variance to section 8.0.1 to allow the bottom of the soil absorption system to be 4 feet above the seasonal high groundwater versus the 5 feet required.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ask for a motion to approve a variance to section 8.0.2, which requires at least 5 feet of natural grade above high groundwater and the soil absorption system to be located in an area where groundwater is at least 5 feet below grade. This can be met nowhere on the site. Ask for a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ask for a motion to grant a variance to section 10.1A to allow the soil absorption system to be 100 feet off the on-site uphill well versus the 125 required in the regulations.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Ask for a motion to approve a variance to section 10.2 to allow the soil absorption system to be 100 feet off of the wetland versus the 125 feet required.
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Any other business to come before this hearing? Hearing none, I close the hearing. And ask
Enjoy your new
is the
system.
Is the plan ready for approval?
Yes, it is, and I failed to note, but on the last one as well as this one, refusal or soils were an issue, but for this site here, deep hole 6 was used as the basis for the groundwater adjustment, and Paul uses the Dedham well. We had this conversation a few minutes ago, about an hour ago, related to that site range.
Yes.
And he's continuing as he's allowed to. Past practice has always been when a Dedham USGS well is used, US Geological Survey well, 10 feet is what's been the standard. It does correlate to the previous discussion we had on the regulation for hazardous waste, but it's in this respect, it's conservative. It's very close to the observation well range, and I would recommend it be allowed at this point until we review the FREMTA method in further detail. With that said, I recommend approval of the plan.
Is there a motion to approve the plan as presented?
So moved?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just a minor question, so are you designing it with or without a garbage grinder? Do we
Without.
need to address that?
Without. And
Okay,
without. So just so the board knows, with that recommendation for approval of the plan, that it not be released until we receive a deed recording for the
Okay.
garbage.
Okay, so we're backing up, and this is a conditional approval.
Thank you.
Requiring a deed recording, prohibiting a garbage grate.
So moved.
It's
Oh.
it's done.
It's done.
A little bit sloppy, but it's done.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Good catch.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't find anything else on this agenda that isn't a scheduled item or an item which was agreed to be scheduled for public purposes.
Do we want to talk
And-
about adding, oh, sorry,
I'm sorry.
adding things to the next agenda?
Yeah, we can talk about the, well, I think we should wait till
Over
we're
here.
closer to finishing this meeting.
Okay.
Because
We have time.
I know we have time, but I think there are going to be lots of things, there might be more things added than you think.
Okay. Could I just tell Ellen something so I
Okay,
don't
fine.
forget?
Okay, we're going to partially go to 9-3-14 added agenda items, please. What do you have for 9-3?
Shopping, yeah.
When I
brought it
won't be
in.
here.
Oh, sorry. Then maybe we want to hold it, this would be a good, we could fill up time this way.
You can't just add things.
No, I mean, with the discussion of whether to have it when you're back would be the minutes from the executive session. I brought that into Ellen and gave her a copy. So that should be reviewed, but maybe we would review it when you're here.
Yeah, they can't be voted when I'm not here, so that's
Okay.
not a good thing.
Okay, So that would be for the meeting.
The 17th meeting.
After.
Or later,
Yeah.
because 17th is going to be really, really busy. See it getting really loaded up.
It's after the 17th.
October,
Don't say 18th, wise guy.
October 1st.
October 1st. Okay, so, as I said, I was going to call a recess until the next variance hearing at 9 o'clock. And that will be a variance hearing for 28 Great Rock Road. So we will be in recess for the next 20 minutes.
Oh, you did.
Welcome back to the Board of Health meeting. It is 9 o'clock. We have a scheduled variance hearing for 28 Great Rock Road. I will explain that this property is presently for sale in the multiple listing service, and I am an active realtor. Therefore, I have a conflict with this property, and the variance hearing will be conducted by the vice chair. I think your microphone will give him that one.
Okay, noting that indeed the hour is 9 o'clock. We'll open the hearing for 28 Great Rock Road for a septic system replacement and variances thereof.
Okay, and I'll first state that all the abutter notifications requirements have been met. Everything's come back and it's all set.
Okay, and also noting that there, I don't think there are any abutters to this property here, and the owner, we're going to, oh dear, unfortunately, probably move through this in a streamlined manner as well, and
Fine with me.
perhaps finish early. So.
All right.
But if anyone would like to come up and look at the plans as Paul is describing the situation at this property, they're welcome to.
This, again, is an upgrade from a failed cesspool, which is located in the front of the house. We recently did number 24 Great Rock Road a month or so ago. 24 Great Rock Road being here and some wetlands down here. This one had no issues with conservation. There are a lot of wells in the area, and the biggest issue with this site is most of the front of the property is in fact ledge. The back of the property, there's a low point back here, and the owner tells me it floods every spring. So even though it would be a violation of the well setback criteria, if we put it back there, the feet of the septic system would always be wet, so it's not a good place to put it. So knowing that, we did a series of soil tests in the front, and as expected, we found ledge in several areas, some areas where there wasn't even 2 feet of soil. So as a result, I ended up designing a alternative system. Otherwise, we would have had a 4-foot mound here, surrounded on 4 sides by retaining walls. It would have really brought down the neighborhood as well as the property itself. So we end up with essentially no mound, but in order to get a septic tank and a pump chamber in, we were going to redo the plumbing in the basement, bring it out the side, and just fill in this back side. The property drops down like this, stays down, and then starts to go back up here. So we're keeping everything out of the front. We fill the cesspool, and we're doing a fast system with a geoflow drip distribution system. And although that does fit in here, we had to go closer to the property lines than normally required by the rules and regulations. So that,
Close to the property line with the road, not within the...
as well as the side, yes. And again, excuse me, the property was professionally surveyed by a registered land surveyor. So with that, the variances from the Sherborn rules and regulations, 7.1A, is it?
Which we're not,
Oh, we're not doing that
You
again?
don't need,
It's not
Okay,
required.
as a condition
That's
to the
withdrawn.
plan approval.
Deed restriction.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, for under section 8.0.1, to allow the soil absorption system to be 2 feet above the seasonal high groundwater versus 5 feet, which are the Sherborn rules, with the use of a fast system and a geoflow drip, and that is in accordance with Title V. Under section 8.0.2, requires at least 5 feet of natural grade above high groundwater, and the system to be located in an area where groundwater is at least 5 feet below grade. This requirement can't be met anywhere in the property. The section also requires 5 feet of naturally occurring pervious soil under the soil absorption system, and that again cannot be met anywhere on this property outside the protective well radius. Separation of 6 feet is required under the soil absorption system where ledge is located within that 6 feet. 2 feet minimum is requested in order to preserve most of the trees in the area in which the soil absorption system is located. The last one under the Sherborn rules and regs is section 10.2, to allow the soil absorption system to be 2 feet off the property line with 24 Great Rock Road and 10 feet off the Great Rock Road right-of-way versus 20 foot required in both of those. And then finally, under
Did
Title
you say
V,
2 feet?
Your
It says
numbers are different than ours,
5.
Paul. 2, and
Should it
we have
be-
5, where you said 2.
to what?
Number 4,
Oh, you said to be 2 feet? Did you mean 5?
No, I meant 5.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
We heard 2.
Well, I'm sorry.
And then
5 feet off the property, yeah, and
15.
15
We
off
heard
of...
10, yeah. Okay.
You heard 10?
Yeah.
Really?
Your estimate.
Wow.
Maybe you were reading
Sorry about
10.2.
Well, you jump to the line above, is there's a 2 feet just above that. Right there, 2 feet.
Oh, yeah. Okay, then under Title 5, local upgrade approval, 15.405, parentheses 1, parentheses A, to allow the soil absorption system, again, to be 5 feet off the property line with 24 Great Rock Road versus 10 feet required, to avoid the ledge outcrops and to allow construction of 100% of the leaching field, rather than to reduce it. Property lines were established by Paul D. Simone, registered land surveyor, Colonial Engineering.
Okay, so this is again a very complicated site. If you knock off the back half of the property for flooding, it's good that the
Yeah.
owner had the experience there to be able to say that. So that makes it wholly unsuitable for a septic system. The ledge doesn't help. Perhaps people who might be watching this, but if you want to come up and see the map, there are well radiuses covering portions of this property as well from both the on-site well and the abutters, so that limits it. And then there's the house and the ledge. So it's not an easy situation. I assume you were out to see the site while they were
That is correct.
doing the deep holes. Anything that could be done any differently than what's being proposed?
I think the engineer designed it the best that could be done, and that is incorporating innovative alternative technologies, and thankfully they were available for a site like this.
Right. And it's replacing a cesspool, so that's a huge improvement.
Okay.
A cesspool right over ledge, so it's going to be better, I think, overall.
And these wells are all upgraded, as you indicated here.
Yes, these are upgrade, that's upgrade 125, and this one's down, so it's 150.
Okay.
Okay, any other
No.
comments from Mark? Any other comments? Any questions? We're trying to stretch out this. Really? None?
Do you want me to make a motion on each item?
Yes, we will go through each one then. Okay, so we don't need the first one. We'll get to that later. So, do I have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.0.1 to allow the bottom of the soil absorption system to be 2 feet above the seasonal high groundwater versus the 5 feet required, but there's going to be the use of a fast system and geoflow drip system?
Motion on that?
And seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I have a motion for a variance to section 8.0.2, which requires at least 5 feet of natural grade above high groundwater and the soil absorption system to be located in an area where groundwater is at least 5 feet below grade? And this cannot be met anywhere on the property, and then there's some other separations that can't be met,
Yes.
which I could
Motion
read,
on
but we
that.
did already. And seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And motion for a variance to section 10.2 to allow the soil absorption system to be 5 feet off of the property line with 24 Great Rock Road and 15 feet off Great Rock Road right-of-way versus the 20 feet required due to the presence of ledge.
Motion on that?
And seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now we have a variance to Title V for local upgrade approval. A motion for the variance to section 15.4051A. I assume that's a 1 and not an L?
It's a one.
Okay.
One,
To allow the soil absorption system to be 5 feet off the property line with 24 Great Rock Road versus 10 feet required to avoid the ledge outcrops.
and motion on that?
And seconded, all those in favor?
Where's your 5 feet here?
Yeah, right there. Thank you.
This, yeah.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, and so now the hearing is closed.
Before you close it, if I may, just for correction, the last item that was approved is a local upgrade approval per Title V. It's not considered a waiver or a variance from Title V.
Oh, okay, that's
They-
what I was
they
wondering, that
separated it as
it's
a
an
local
upgrade
upgrade
approval as opposed to.
Correct, and it was worded properly on the request letter.
Okay, all right, so the hearing is closed, but now there's the approval,
Yeah, you sign this.
upgrade approval to sign.
The garbage grinder.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're going to get to the plan
Oh.
approval in just a moment.
All right.
So,
At the very bottom.
signature. I'll let you find the name. And, okay, and next is the plan ready for approval.
If it is, with some comment, I would just like to note the groundwater. Every time we seem to find a site, there could be some variations. When there's ledge, it's very difficult to determine groundwater. Typically, the groundwater will move along the ledge. It perches itself on top of the ledge and follows the ledge. Paul and I both agreed that groundwater is to be considered 6 inches above the refusal mark, which is the ledge. I think that's a reasonable approach. We both agreed to that. I just want to make that known before I recommend to the board that the plan be approved with the condition that prior to it being released, that a deed recording be provided both for the garbage grinder, that is a restriction to it, as well as the IA technology is required by the
Way
state.
of detecting fissures in the ledge, or, you know, that analysis isn't done.
No.
Okay, do we need anything special noted about the groundwater other than it's already
I noted
incorporated
for the
into the
record.
plan?
Yes, it is. It's
So we
noted
don't
right
need-
on the plan as well.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to approve the plan subject to proof of deed recording for the garbage grinder restriction and the use of IA technology before the plan is released? And seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Else?
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, only 13 minutes. We tried. I guess we can sign the plans now.
Sure. Yeah, you can. Why not? Anything you take time. Joe, you want to have the first crack at these? Okay, as noted earlier, we have limited amount of business, and the scheduled appointments dictated when the scheduled business happened. Because of the scheduled appointments, the item of great public interest, I've been told, I assured people would not able to be discussed until 10 o'clock, and I'm obliged to honor that commitment. So the only other item we have remaining is a 9:30 appointment for John Higley of the Planning Board, who was to be here to preview the town-wide survey results. John unfortunately is ill and will not be here for that purpose. However, at the same time, because he was going to be here, we were going to be reviewing the proposals for peer review for the environmental health and impact report for the Abbey Road project. And that piece of business we will still conduct. I'm not sure that that is time sensitive with the schedule, and so I'm going to suggest that we discuss that now. And that if that discussion does not last till 10 o'clock, we will take another recess, unfortunately, with my apologies. We try to schedule these as we anticipate the time it will take, but we certainly overestimated this time. So,
I think maybe there's also some of the other correspondence that we received that we could, do we need to address?
I don't have it on the agenda.
Oh, so
You could note it for the record as something you're not anticipating.
But we'd only be noting it? No,
But you could
yeah.
Go ahead, whatever you got, note it for the record.
Okay,
Go on.
we received an informational notice about drinking water at a couple of locations. Let me pull that. It has to do, there's routine testing that is done on public water supplies, and I'm forgetting which one. Okay, so where we are, right? This building. They had a hit on coliform, and so that's, I believe, usually a monthly test. And when they get a positive result, it's required to have a posting to notify people, and retesting is done immediately. They found, let's see. So the routine sample was taken on a Thursday, then they did confirmation samples on Friday immediately following that. It tested positive for coliform, but negative for E. coli, and so that's a big difference between those, certainly. And the confirmation samples afterwards were confirmed that coliform was present, but again, it was negative for E. coli, and then they treated the well with chlorine and did retesting, and everything was negative afterwards. So, variety of things that could cause coliform to be present. And it's not necessarily dangerous. Again, E. coli is a really different story if it had been positive for that. And they're required to do a posting so that people who are using the water are aware of the situation. Sometimes, and it depends on the posting, I don't know if that was, postings are done variably, but sometimes it includes information such as boil the water, just be aware of it, or care to be taken if there's someone whose health is compromised in some way, not to drink it. And reporting is made to the DEP as well when that happens. So,
Yeah, that would include those immunocompromised, those on steroids, knocking down their immune system so that they wouldn't be able to fight off an intestinal bug or some other thing. HIV positive.
I think that was the only one we received, right? Okay.
I'm sorry, did you say at the beginning of your comments where the well was?
It's the well serving this building.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that review. So that brings us to discussion of the peer review proposals for the Environmental Health and Impact Report for the Abbey Road project. The Board of Health sent out a request which included the requirements for both for the Board of Health, the Planning Board, and the Conservation Commission, feeling that obviously it would be convenient if the same person were reviewing all requirements so that we don't have duplication of effort. 3 different organizations were sent out, and 3 responded. We had a response from Metro West Engineering Incorporated, from Beals and Thomas, and from Hydroanalysis. We have, since receiving those reports, received memos from the Planning Board, who indicate to us that their preference would be that the contract go to either Hydroanalysis or Beals and Thomas. And from the Conservation Commission, that their preference would be that the contract go to Hydroanalysis or Beals and Thomas.
Strictly on a cost basis, not a professional or historical basis.
Yeah, that's right, I'm sorry. One of them,
Right here, based on their price.
yeah, the Planning Board was based on the price. The Conservation Commission notes that they have the credentials to perform the work requested. And so, we have three proposals. It would be hard for me to summarize them. They're all proposing to do the same relative scope of work. And they all come up with three very different total costs. Metro West Engineering has a proposal for $15,960. Beals and Thomas has a proposal for $12,500. And Hydroanalysis has a proposal for $7,045.
I would mention, I think some of that is the Metro West hourly rate is high, considerably higher for the bulk of the work in comparison to the others. So in a way, I mean, that is their cost, and that may be the reason to not consider them further. But it suggests that they're all looking at same relative level of effort. So there seems to be some consistency there across all three.
That includes the planning board presentation.
It includes the requirements set forth for the Board of Health, the Planning Board, and the Conservation
Because
Commission.
initially it was just Board of Health, and then we decided.
Right, initially, but
Yeah,
these three proposals cover all three.
Now, I know that Hydroanalysis and Beals and Thomas have done work for the town. I didn't know about Metro West, but the advantage there, I think, is that they have some understanding already of the town, which I think is a benefit to us. They're higher on that learning curve. And one other comment I'd make on difference in cost is Hydroanalysis did not propose a site visit or include it in the description, so I don't know whether they're considering it, but they don't describe it in their proposal, whereas Beals and Thomas does. So I think site visits are always useful, and I would probably want to ask them to do that, even if they hadn't planned it, so that would bump up their cost a little.
My own view, and it's more on a dollar basis, is that the difference between 12,500 and 7,045 is a significant number. If there is something missing in the hydroanalysis, which is a less expensive proposal, that is, if there's a site visit that's requested to be added, in that differential, there's plenty of room to add it. And I believe that I believe all the proposals are probably light on the number of meetings that will be required. It's our experience that somehow once is not enough. And so that there should be anticipation that there could be added costs based on just continued meetings that require the presence of experts. So my preference, obviously, would be to leave room for that in the total overall cost. And I recognize this cost is going to the applicant, not to the town, but I still think that in fairness and consideration, with equal credentials, that 7,045 is a far more acceptable number than 12,500. And if there's a misunderstanding about the scope, I think there's more than enough room to adjust the scopes. Chris?
I concur. Yeah.
I agree as well. And they're both good firms, so.
Well, I will make clear, this is a administrative board decision, and we're trying to make this decision in concert with both the planning board and the Conservation Commission. They have narrowed the scope for us, and I believe it's up to us to further narrow the scope and award a contract and keep this thing moving.
Let me ask a question, Peter. Sure. What if, with Darrell's suggestion of hydroanalysis site visit, they miraculously come out to the same figure of 12,500, which I can't imagine, but just
How would they do that?
repeat site visits.
Well, maybe something we could do is specify, we expect you to spend X number of hours, for a site visit or something. It's not a 5-day site visit, it's a
Would-
fraction of a day site
Let me
visit.
rephrase. Would there be a different approach if the costs were the same on these two outfits? Does
If-
one
if
do
the-
better work than the other in our experience?
I have no basis on which to make that decision. You know, I
Both
mean,
have worked for the town.
they both worked for the town, they both have excellent credentials.
Right, they've both, I think, have done good work for the town, as both the Planning Board and Conservation Commission has noted. So hydroanalysis, I know, was involved on a number of projects over at least the last 10 years. And Beals and Thomas, I think, is more recent, some more recent projects, but Conservation Commission would know that a little bit better than I, but,
Well, this is somewhat within your realm, and so I obviously defer.
And I'm
I
familiar
defer to- I
with-
defer to you on this.
I'm familiar with both firms, and they are good. They're intelligent,
answers
and
my
they do
question,
good
so.
work, quality work. So I don't really think we could go wrong,
They're an
so.
equivalent, so.
Yeah, as far as a practical, as far as the procedural administration of this, if more is required, then the applicant obviously has to cover that cost for the more that's required. If a site visit isn't in here and a site visit is essential to this analysis, then a site visit has to be added, has to be paid for. It all unfortunately still defers to the applicant.
Well,
So
it's going to push it closer to the competitor. That's my only
it
point.
is, but it'd be hard to spend that on one or two site visits. I could see it
But
being
it's some-
spent on several night meetings, but,
Right.
Yeah.
but even so, I mean, it,
No, I think my question's been answered, so.
all right. So I didn't.
The other thing I think we might be able to get creative, and now I'm forgetting which one was which, but yes, I believe they both had separate meetings for each Board of Health, Planning Board, and Conservation Commission. And I was thinking, depending on if we think it may be more than the 3 meetings, if there's a way to perhaps have a joint meeting at one point, maybe to launch all of us, or something along those lines. Maybe there's another way, rather than ending up with, say, 5 meetings or 6 meetings, if we think there'd be multiples.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? We all get together,
sure.
hear their presentation collectively,
Sure.
hear what each other is thinking, and move on from there, possibly, as a way. Might be logistically difficult to get all 3 boards
done
in
it
one
before.
place at one time, but,
Some of these other groups, yeah.
Well, when you come right down to try and analyze them, they're hard to analyze because one simply says X thousands of dollars for each chunk, and the other one is noting man-hours per person and for each project. Each group, Board of Health, Conservation, and Planning Board. But I still come down on the fact that there's, with equally valid credentials, there's more than enough room financially to award to hydroanalysis and ask for additional work. So I ask for a motion that the board award a peer review contract on behalf of the Board of Health, Conservation Commission, and the Planning Board to hydroanalysis based on their proposal dated July 30th, 2014, in the amount of $7,045 initial expense.
so moved, but by auzing at that amount, are we fixing it at that? Are
No,
we
I'm saying
implying
that, I'm describing their proposal.
Oh, all right, yes, so moved.
And second.
Moved and
And
seconded.
is this a topic that's inappropriate for any public comment, because it's really a decision on,
It's administrative.
yeah.
If people had a thought on it, I'll listen. Hello? Yeah, I mean, it's, okay. Too bad
Try to use up
too
time.
bad the camera didn't catch the reactions out there. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is accomplished. Do you need these proposals? Because I don't.
I don't, I'll take them. but
Yeah, well,
with the right.
in case somebody wants a copy. Actually, did the applicant get copies of those?
I believe he has.
Okay. Here's some more. And we now find ourselves with no more business except a single item scheduled for 10 o'clock. And it is 9:30, with the apologies of the board and unfortunately not tight scheduling. We will be in recess until 10 o'clock.
Could we have a dance party? Not on camera.
Excuse me, why don't you wait till we're recessed and off camera before you suggest a dance party? Jeez.
People would come on down.
That'd be time to go, actually could have time to go get some coffee.
Honey chips or edible chips?
We off?
For chips.
Pat's Okay, the Board of Health meeting is back in session. It is 10 o'clock. This is the time when we noted to quite a few people that the item of interest would be taken up. The item of interest is on the agenda as a contract for the Board of Health agent. And let me scope the circumstances here. The board became aware of a conflict of interest regulation whereby it turns out that a single individual may not be working on two contracts at the same time with the town. And insofar as the Board of Health had a contract with the agent for health agent services and a separate contract for food inspection services, this was a problem that had to be cured. And the manner of cure was frankly to terminate both contracts and replace two contracts with a different arrangement. And that's what we're here to discuss tonight. I will tell you that a registered letter was sent to the agent and acknowledged, and that effective on September 12th, unless some other action is taken, the Board of Health will not have any professional agents' services available.
It's actually September 15th.
No, it's actually,
That's when he received it.
he received it on the 15th,
The
and
15th.
4 weeks later is the 12th.
Oh, okay.
It's not a month, it's 4
Okay.
weeks. And the Board of Health has a responsibility to provide and continue to provide services to the town. The board may seemingly proceed in any of the following manners to meet that responsibility. As I see it, and this is something the board will be discussing, but we may undertake to execute a new contract for services on either an hourly or retainer basis sometime before September 12th, with an agreement to undertake an RFP process to be completed by the end of the fiscal year. We might execute a letter of agreement with the agent by September 12th to continue all existing services on an as-needed basis at an agreed hourly rate until an RFP process can be undertaken in a timely manner. We might execute a letter of agreement with the agent by September 12th for continuation of all existing services on a retainer basis at a set weekly rate for all required services until an RFP process can be undertaken in a timely manner. We may allow the contracts with the agent to expire on September 12th, 2014, and immediately undertake an RFP process in a timely manner. However, in the meantime, the Board of Health members would be forced to act as the agent in the interim. That is, you should be aware the Board of Health members can act as the agent or behalf of an agent or can on behalf of the board. But I will tell you that not one of us is qualified to do the work of the agent. So I'm trying to scope the circumstances as they exist and point out to you that the purpose of this item on the agenda is that the board find a way to continue the services to the town that are necessary for the functioning of the board and that is required by law. You might notice that in every one of these items, the board is intending to undertake an RFP process, that is a request for proposal process, to have an open process to find or to have an agent serve the Board of Health. In talking with town council, it would appear that the proper way to do that is to use the town procurement officer, which would be David Williams, in a complete RFP process. I will tell you that process takes no less than 60 days and probably quite a bit more. So regardless of what happens, the board must find a way to continue the work of the board for a period of time, whether it be 60, 90 days, or 6 months. And that is the discussion that we're going to be having. There's greater imperative also because at the next meeting, I will be out of the country and not available, and there is only one more scheduled meeting before all these contracts terminate. So we basically have to reach a conclusion tonight as to what action to take, and then have that action taken by the board members at the meeting of September 3rd. It's all quite driven by the calendar and the schedule. To that end, I would ask if the board members have any thoughts on how they might see us proceeding.
So I'd say that there are you laid out 4 options, but I think the 4th one is not reasonable because services to residents or anyone else coming into town would fall apart, essentially.
It's not acceptable to me.
So,
The 4th option is the Board of Health members take over the duties of the agent for which we're not qualified. And I just don't think that's reasonable.
Well,
And I note it only because it reinforces the imperative that we do something other than that.
Well, none of us are certified food inspectors.
Well, right, we would have to find a contract for that immediately.
so then the difference between the other choices, there are 2 main differences after that, and one is arranging for services to continue, we talked about to the end of the fiscal year. Fiscal year ends June 30th or?
June 30th, yeah.
Okay, so that would be the other approach, but the town does not do that for its other contracts? Is that the issue?
Okay, actually, I left out a piece. There's no way that we can complete an RFP process and get a full contract in place by September 12th.
Mm-hmm.
What we can do under the Procurement Act is we can have a letter of understanding for a value of less than $5,000 for work to continue under the current circumstances. All right, I guess that's the best way I could put it. But the point being that anything under $5,000, I'm advised, does not require a formal RFP process, and that services could continue on a repeating basis until the completed RFP process could be implemented. Again, the 60 to 90 days.
Right, but part of the goal here, possibly, the distinction between those 2 groups, and really it's either have an RFP process and then a new contract in place for the new fiscal year next year would be one set, and then the other two involved some temporary interim solution and then getting to the RFP process as soon as possible, essentially. So,
The essential difference is, yeah,
Okay.
one we look for an RFP
so those
process
are
that ends the
the,
June
that's the
30th,
divide there.
and the other one we do it within 90 days.
And the difference between those is we can pursue either, but the town typically would pursue something sooner rather than put it off to some point in the, fixed time in the future. Is that what was relayed to you? Am I understanding that correctly?
We can do either one. It's a board decision, I think, and a board judgment as to whether or not we immediately undertake an RFP process with letters of agreement in the interim, or whether or not we continue letters of agreement with the aim of our RFP process concluding in June 30th. That's really what it comes down to. Whether that end up being on a retainer basis or an hourly basis is a fine point, I think, of the discussion. The end analysis, we got to do something to have services continue after September 12th. So
Mr. Chairman, can I ask for clarification?
you may.
Thank you. I'm not sure I understood your possible paths for the board to go down here. Was there a path where the board would hire an interim health agent and an interim health inspector that is not Mr. Orm? Was that among your list of possible scenarios this evening to consider?
No, it was not on something that could possibly be accomplished by September 12th.
Okay, I guess what I would ask also be considered on your list would be the possibility, and I spoke with David Williams about this, and he tells me, and I'm also aware independently, that there are multiple companies in the state of Massachusetts that supply these services on a fee-for-service basis. I understand the issue about $5,000, but what I would suggest is perhaps you could sign a contract for $5,000, have those interim services, and if your RFP for a new permanent process is not complete, then you would do another contract for $5,000 until the RFP is complete. That I would suggest that would be another way that you might consider approaching this.
Well, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. The only difference being is that you're suggesting we do it with someone other than Mr. Orm.
That is correct.
I understand that. Thank you.
That is correct.
I'll take another comment if you'd like.
I don't know how these meetings work. Is the public allowed to ask questions?
Actually, technically, this is an administrative operation of the board, that this is a decision the board has to undertake and actions the board has to take. In the RFP process, there is certainly a component of public participation in looking at qualifications of applicants and in considering contracts and so forth. There would be more public participation. I see this as more of an emergency circumstance where we in fact have to cure an unexpected situation where there were two contracts that no one for decades knew were a problem, all right, in having two separate contracts with a contractor for the town. And when that came to light, we are obliged to cure that situation. The statute gives us 30 days, gives the involved party 30 days to cure the circumstance from the time of notification. Mr. Orem was notified on August 15th, and 30 days from that is roughly September 15th, after which time, if the situation isn't cured, if you will, severe penalties and so forth can ensue. That's the statute. We cured that ourselves quite simply by invoking the cancellation process on both contracts, recognizing that we could replace those contracts on an interim basis and proceed. That's where we are today.
The question I was asking is whether I can ask a question.
Oh, I thought that was your question. Okay, what is your question?
No, I got all that.
Okay, fine.
My first question is this, I don't know how these meetings work. Are we allowed to have a discussion about this, or are we just observing you? Can I ask the question? That's my
Is
question.
that's your question? That's what I thought I just answered, that no, this is more administrative action
So
of
I
the
can't
board.
ask questions.
Okay, ask your question. I thought that was your question. Yes, ask a question. I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah, no.
Yes, what's your question?
I have two questions. One question is, can we do a thought experiment here for a second? Let's just assume, for argument's sake, I know this is not the case, that Mark Oram was unable or incapacitated, or for whatever reason, family reason, whatever, couldn't do the job. He left the state, right? What would we do? In other words, let's pretend for a second it's not a contract issue. Let's pretend that the administrator or the agent is gone.
Yeah.
What would be the solution? I've got to believe there are scores of solutions. People, you can pick up the phone and call and say, we need a Board of Health agent, on an interim
Okay,
basis.
I'm going to answer your question by saying thank you for the thought. All right? I can't respond to that. I don't intend to open the meeting to that breadth of discussion about possibilities. Not really, again, this is administrative, something for the board to decide how to proceed on an interim basis, and this is not, I'm not ready to undertake to have a total change to the organization of the board, or the organization of the work of the
I don't
board.
even know what you're saying. I don't
People
know
have
I'm
come
not
to
even
be
what you're
heard
saying.
tonight. Obviously, they're out at 10 o'clock.
Yes,
in the
I
middle
know
of
they've
all
come
this.
to be heard
They want
tonight.
to be heard. This is New England town government. Let's have a conversation.
I guess if I could ask a couple questions.
Sure.
Just as it's been stated in a number of emails, concerns on the health agents' services provided and the billing, and, I think a lot of that's been looked into, and there's been a lot of answers we've seen that justify what was billed. Certainly the method of posted notes, I think we all agreed that that could be improved, although that didn't make it illegal or wrong. So just as there was a concern that there was overcharge on the part of the town's funds, I would also want to look at the other side, which would probably drive this into an executive session, which is what are the potential costs to the town and the liability of breaking a contract that is right now written FY13 through FY17, perhaps?
Mr. Chairman, the contract
What
was
it-
broken.
what
It
it-
was able to
what
be
is
broken
the,
on 4 weeks' notice. It's
what
in the
it-
contract.
What is the exposure of the town cost-wise of lack of services and someone getting food poisoning, or multiple people? So I think that has to be brought into the discussion as well. It could be up for discussion who provides those services, but I certainly agree with the chair that there is potential for emergency situation where services aren't provided as far as food inspections.
Well, it's more than food inspections, it's also all the other work that the agent does, even including plan submittals, reviews for perk tests, soil tests. The entire work of the agent, can't just be stopped. And I understand that the motivation for several people in the audience is to have someone other than the current agent do this work. And I will tell you that, the board is committed. I think you saw in my discussion of all the options that, we will be undertaking a rigorous request for proposal process for a new permanent contract. We are faced now, however, with an interim situation, and I'm not prepared to go out and try to find someone else that knows our regulations inside and out and has familiarity with all the work that has to be done on just a short-term moment's notice. And I have no reason to do that. Yes, Grace?
Could I ask you a question? I know that some of this material has been forwarded to town council. Is what you're saying tonight based upon advice you have been given?
I have been given advice by council that we can undertake interim agreements of under $5,000 to continue the necessary work of the board while we pursue an RFP process, and I've been encouraged to do that RFP process through David Williams, who is the town procurement officer.
And town council also felt that the contract as written and the fact that there were two contracts as a cause or a reason that you are able to withdraw from those two contracts without penalty to the town?
Not quite in agreement with my fellow board member. That's somewhat of a moot point insofar as the contracts all had mutually four-week notice cancellation privileges without any reason at all.
So that's,
And those 4-week notices have already been given and invoked.
okay.
And why I tell you, this is possibly an emergency of our own making. However, we felt to cure the circumstance, that was the most appropriate approach. And having done that, we now must provide for interim services for the Board of Health.
And I'd like to mention, from my perspective, that I think I would like, on one hand, I would like to have some discussion because I think there's been misunderstandings and misinformation, and it's a complex situation. I think it would be important to talk about it, but we haven't had all of our discussions with council yet. And some of these issues, they are not sure where the line is of what we can discuss and what we can't. So it just makes it complicated to know what we can explore this evening, but what we know we can explore is how we're going to take care of this
So you're focusing
more
on
immediate situation.
You're focusing on finding some way of providing services between the termination of services and the results of an RFP.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Okay.
And you have two ways of doing that, it would appear.
To Maine with some
Couple ways.
variations, right.
Okay. But you have not resolved the question of all of the other issues with town council.
We have yet to have an issue, we have yet to have an executive session with town council. There is a joint executive session with selectmen scheduled for September, later in September, with town council. There will be additional meetings with town council. There have been allegations made that have been, that have been unanswered and or have to be answered. There are legal issues that cannot be discussed in open meeting.
So that you won't.
And we are trying to get through the next several months.
So there's no doubt that by the time all of those issues are resolved with town council, if they're resolved in one way, the agent could be the person chosen after an RFP.
Most assuredly,
But
if
you
there's an
don't
open
know
if there's an
that
open
now.
RFP process, the agent could end up being the agent.
Right, but you don't know that
We
because
do not
none
know.
of that
We
has
have
been
no, we have no,
resolved
we
yet.
have no idea how that'll go.
Which would suggest that it might be safest to turn towards a company and a more impersonal level of service and in the interim until those issues are resolved, and that's just an opinion.
Thank you. Frank, did you want to say something? Because we'd really like, what's your comment, Frank?
Well, it would seem to me that you've identified the logical step, and that is to do the $5,000 interim services and go through the RFP process.
That's pretty much what I had hoped we'd come to.
Now,
Susie?
the question I have is, will you get sufficient responses? Are there people out there in the community that will provide these services?
Well, you ask a very good question, and part of that, and my concern is in basically how we structure the RFP, how we proceed, and that's going to take a lot of discussion and by the board, which we have not had. But the point being is that there are quite a few ways that RFP could be put together. We could split contracts. We could look at separate services from different individuals. And frankly, we have not had those discussions yet. We were looking to cure an immediate situation. We believe we have cured that situation, and we now must account for the lack of services. And we feel that we have to do something about that. And that's what we're going to do. And that's why I keep pointing out that In some respects, this is strictly an administrative move. Public comment, I expect, would be far more valuable and useful when we have a variety of candidates to discuss and are looking at the merits of each. All right? Susan Tyler, did you have a comment?
No, I just had a real quick question. You mentioned earlier that there was a statute. What's the statute that you're referring to as far as the two contracts and?
It is a portion of the conflict of interest statute, which basically says that a single employee in a town may not be working under two separate contracts, and for the purposes of the conflict of interest law, the definition of employee takes on a very broad meaning, being contractors, consultants, direct employees, part-time employees, anybody working for the town. And having been advised of these aspects of the statute, we felt it was prudent to not, in fact, tread in that direction. And again, I tell you, we have undertaken to cure that situation. That's where we are today. And that's where we are, that's what we're responding to. And I believe we are fulfilling our responsibilities as a board. So again, I would bring it back to the board and ask, how would you see us proceeding?
From the standpoint of having the time to do the RFP, I wouldn't mind going on the fiscal year. However, that is inconsistent, I guess, with how the town would normally do it. So I'd probably say let's try and align with the way it's done elsewhere within the town, and then choose one of the other two options of, right, retainer or hourly services. Or some,
Right. And
something, interim arrangements to continue the current level of services.
We're hitting up against obviously a dearth of meetings. There's this meeting and then the two of you meeting on September 3rd. Chris, do you have any thoughts on the matter?
No, I was in agreement with Darrell but if there's no particular reason to do the fiscal year, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the other two options? I guess would be the next question logically.
Well, the only difference on those two options is whether or not we proceed on a retainer basis, which basically would ask the agent to proceed on a quoted monthly rate or weekly rate for services necessary for the town. I mean, it's sort of the way things go now, or to proceed or continue on an hourly rate as the current contract is, at the same current hourly rate, with invoicing as detailed as it's been, which again might be less of a change and more straightforward.
As detailed as it's been more recently.
It's been extremely detailed recently, accounting for,
which has been an improvement.
Which has been an improvement, and has been approved by the town administrator and reviewed by the selectmen. I think what's required is that between now and the next meeting, the two of you would be undertaking to get a letter of agreement with the agent for a continuation of services, and that we, use that time to explore how to proceed in detail with the RFP process. And actually, I think, that's going to be a fairly lengthy discussion on just how we frame that RFP. But I think it's important that we continue what's currently underway, that we use the knowledge of the current agent with even the applications that are already in and partway under consideration, and that there not be an interruption in those services.
I agree.
And the hourly is more in line, so how long do you expect a 5,000 or under 5,000 amount to run through?
It would probably be, it would be roughly, I think the current budget is 47,000. I would believe it, it would run at about 4,000 a month. And it would require renewing every two meetings.
Also, David Williams did let us know that we are authorized to use town council for assistance on this matter.
Oh, absolutely.
So-
No, town council called me today. I've been in contact with both, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name now.
St. Jean.
Barbara St. Andre.
St. Andre, Barbara St. Andre, and with Chris Brown, and we're in contact and communication. And
Right, but that, I think Chris and I would be able to take advantage of their services and try to
Right.
put something together.
Right. I think, again, and, you know, and as Barbara St. Andre pointed out to me, you know, this can be something as simple as a letter agreement to continue services, da-da-da-da-da, as long as, you know, we don't exceed $5,000 and we're not going out for, you know, and we will then find a way to go to competitive bids. I think it's important here is that we move to an RFP process as soon as possible. I think there's enough interest and pressure to do that, and I think, you know, that's the proper response, that we go through the formal process and that we do it with the guidance of council and the town administrator.
Peter, can I ask a question? You said in the beginning that he was under two separate contracts for two different kinds of jobs. Are you talking about combining them to continue services?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the letter agreement would be to continue services under a single letter of agreement.
Okay.
Instead of health agent and food inspections, it would be
The
combined.
same, okay. That wasn't clear. Thank you.
So I guess I would look for a vote of the board to, between now and the next meeting, craft a letter of agreement for continued services, and that we would, in the interim, pursue direction of town council on framing an RFP and beginning that process. Do I hear is so moved?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved and second. Is there any?
Just a little discussion on whether it needs to be by the next meeting, or is this something we need to go into meetings with town council anyway to do?
You should,
Is it a public process,
You
or
should
is it
consult,
a?
no, you should consult town
executive?
council for the letter, but you've got to do the letter's got to be a public process, I believe.
Okay.
And you should do that at the next meeting. And what I might ask is there a need for a meeting before that meeting? Is there any reason that we should meet and, as a board, to align our thoughts or share our thoughts? And
So
it would be,
just
it'd be a subject,
logistically-
it would be subject of a contract, so I'm not sure that we couldn't have it in executive session, but as you know, we can't talk anyplace other than here,
Right.
you know.
So Chris and I would have to set up a meeting anyway to be able to do something. And then the question is whether it's before you leave or not. So, all right, I assume, so Chris, do you think there'd be a day between now and September 3rd that we'd be able to find?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, why don't we make a
September
point
3rd
to
is
try
a
to do
Wednesday.
that and have an executive session to thrash this out?
And,
Clearly, there's reason to have executive session with the, where there was a contract before,
Yeah.
the exposure there.
Okay, well, but we have a motion on the table on an action to proceed.
yes.
And,
You unilaterally ruled out the possibility of contracting with someone other than the agent.
as of now?
Yeah.
Yes.
What I heard you say earlier was, I wouldn't consider that because no one would understand our bylaws and regulations.
I said I wouldn't consider it because it wouldn't be a best continuation of services. It would not be the best continuation of all the work that's currently underway. And I have no reason to not continue with this current agent. There's no basis on not using the current agent.
Is this board not concerned with the information it's received in recent days on the agent's contractual performance?
We're not unaware of the allegations you've made, but they
I
are.
really haven't made allegations, Mr. Chairman. What I have done is provided information to be looked at by you all.
And we have looked at it.
And we have looked at it, and you've done your own analysis
Could
of
I
it.
just say one further thing?
Sure.
I've provided you with some information. At your last meeting, I said to you in an open meeting that I have a tremendous amount of information that I've developed. And I would be happy to share it with you in executive session or in public session, as you wish. But I said that I wanted very much to do that. And I received blank stares. There was no uptake. So in recent days, when I heard about the fact that you were going to potentially sign a new contract with this agent, I put forth a small amount of information that I had developed. I have 10 times that amount of information. I have put a lot of time and a lot of effort into this because I think this situation is very grave for our town, and I think it needs to be addressed by this board. And I think, frankly, given what you now know and what you will know in the future, you should not continue to do business with this agent.
I think any exposure to this town is of grave concern to this board, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's your allegations as I've read them in the emails, or the other side of things where contracts have now been null and voided.
Dr. Quinn, the contracts with Mr. Oram are voidable without cause.
That's been mentioned tonight.
On 4 weeks'
That's
notice.
been done.
That's
Did
been
you not
mentioned.
hear? That's been
But
done.
I don't see any legal risk in voiding those contracts when it's...
No, you don't understand. They have been voided.
I understand that. I learned that this evening.
Well,
That's, you're not a lawyer and I'm not a lawyer. But if I were someone who had a contract through FY17, I might have an argument otherwise.
It's voidable in 4 weeks' notice.
okay.
I might not. I'm not an attorney. I don't know the answer.
I'm just curious, so I assume that the information you sent was the information you had referred to, and you're now saying that you have more. Is there a reason you haven't sent the other information?
I have not been invited to speak before you in public or in executive session. At your last meeting, I offered to come to you in public or executive session and lay out the information I have in detail. And you have thus far ignored me. So even though I've been ignored, I've sent a couple of emails with some fairly significant and important information.
And we have looked into that, and we've looked into the others, and I
You
do
looked
not
into
think
the
it's
information that I provided you?
We
Excuse
certainly
me?
have.
Yes, we look at everything that you provide, and we've spent a great deal of time addressing everything that you have sent to us via email and phone messages and coming to meetings and speaking about, and I think that we're making that effort. So I really am not sure why you think you're being ignored, because we've spent a fair amount of time, and I believe we've had...
Speak to you, and there was no uptake. There was no, yes, please come and speak to us. If you have information, we want to hear it. And so now I've put that information out to try and, frankly, get some attention on the matter.
But your information is inaccurate.
My information is inaccurate.
The information that's been looked into has been inaccurate, so.
And this goes into the... It's hard to know how much we can discuss about this, but we've had several extra meetings this summer that to address things that you have brought up. So we're making the effort. We think that there are some things that have come out, that there are some improvements that have been made, not that things were necessarily broken before or being done illegally or whatever else, well, the 2 contracts perhaps, but not with malintent. And so we're making the efforts to look at where improvements could be made, and it's a process. And you know, and you certainly want us to behave in the way where we have these discussions at public meetings. We don't work on this outside other than to read the information that comes in and, try to do some research or that sort of thing. But we can't talk about it until we're at these meetings. And when the meetings are scheduled, they're all posted. So there is a time delay, and I'm not sure if you feel that you're being ignored because, well, it's not our full-time jobs, right? So we're not doing this every day. It's not as if it's a staff in a city where there are 40-hour-a-week workers who could devote all their time to this, and we need to have the public meetings. So it just may seem like it's moving in geologic time, but we're working on all of those matters and trying to get things taken care of. So the 2 weeks in between each meeting may be very frustrating for you and may appear as if nothing is going on, but things are happening.
You're not
So,
allowed to time up this stuff except for the public meetings.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
exactly,
So-
no
So
decisions
we're in this
at all.
public meeting, right? This
And
is a
that's why
public
we're
meeting.
talking about it. yeah.
Right, but you're not talking about any of the substantive points that this guy brought up, so. when
Not
are
at-
you gonna talk about that?
Not at
Because
this
we
time.
haven't spoken to council yet
I
about that, and we have
So
been
you plan-
advised by them
You plan to do
to
that?
not, yes, we,
At a future public meeting?
to talk more about it, sure, once we know where we stand and what we're talking about.
Or
and
even
collect
if on
all
advice
more
of council, if
information.
we can talk about it in an open meeting. Well,
Right.
let me make this commitment to you, Mr. Murchison. You might hear, we are trying to schedule an executive session to discuss this contract between now and the time I leave. I will, I'm sorry?
When are you leaving again?
On the 3rd, the day of the next meeting. I will ask council whether or not, in fact, it's appropriate for you to attend a portion of that executive session with your information, all right? And see what council's opinion is. And if council's opinion is that that's appropriate or permissible or recommended, or if they recommend against it, I don't know, but I will ask council, all right? I certainly do not want to give you, let me put it this way, I do not want to give you a stage to present that in an open meeting as unreviewed material, all right, as basically just you hand it to us and say, here it is, and we haven't seen it, we haven't reviewed it or anything else, because we have found discrepancies between material that you've presented and your conclusions from that material.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying some things right now that are a little confusing to me.
Okay.
What I have presented to you, for the most part, is data that has been pulled from public records of this town,
Yes.
of the town of Ashland,
I understand.
of the town of Norfolk, the
Yes.
town of Marlborough,
Yes.
and I have put that data, pretty much, I've compiled the data, and I've shown you that compiled data. Dr. Quinn keeps saying I've made allegations. Actually, I haven't really made any allegations. What I have presented might lead one to think there are problems, but I have not made any direct allegations.
I think it's how data gets interpreted, and there are so many situations and examples where it's how the data is interpreted and analyzed. And that's what we need to work on.
When you come to a point where 102 hours are billed in the span of 6 or 8 days,
Right, you're putting us in a
And again,
difficult
and
position
again.
because you're talking about things where we can't respond right now. It's going to sound odd to anybody else listening. It's your right to speak that. But we can't help shed light on those things that you're talking about right now. And there is light to be shed. We will find that out, and it's going to be this protracted process, and that's the way it works because nobody wants us going off and doing this not in a public meeting, right? That wouldn't be appropriate. So we need to stick to this process, which is going to be slower than you would like. So, but that's the best we can do, and we really are trying. We really are trying. And if you don't feel we are, or that we're doing something without the best of intentions, maybe you should be expressing that so we can address that, because it's frustrating to be trying and to feel as if we're being accused for not doing the right thing or purposely trying to avoid doing the right thing, which I think is far from the
I'm not
truth.
questioning anyone's motives or integrity. It's very clear from what you're saying that this will take months to figure out, right?
Exactly
Possibly.
So
right.
if it's going to take months to figure out, you are by definition going to be doing constant $5,000 contracts with the agent, right? I mean, it's what's going to
That's what I
happen,
heard,
right?
conceivably.
Right.
Possibly.
So when is your thought process of an RFP process starting? Is that something you would? When would
Well,
you
part of
start?
that is why we're trying to schedule an executive session to talk about the contract. All right, that's the next step for us, to be able to talk about it among ourselves, not in a public meeting, because it is a contract situation. All right. We can't get together. We have limited times we can get together to get anywhere on this, and, in between times, we can individually talk to council, but it is not, it's not a quick process. You just identified that. Frank, you had a question.
Well, no, I was going to suggest, I think you, Peter, made a good suggestion, and that is to check with town council to see if they could be invited to your next meeting. Would it help if they were able to provide the additional information to town council? Because town council won't know whether to invite them or not, because they won't know the council won't know what the information is they're talking about.
Yeah,
So-
it probably will. It would be helpful if, this
Would it be
wealth of
helpful, Bob?
information were in some way confidentially communicated to the board and to council, but that's not up to me.
Would that help, Bob?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding.
I was suggesting that you indicated you have additional information. Would you be willing to provide that additional information to town
I have
council?
spoken with town council about a fair amount of information thus far. In other words, more qualitatively
Yeah.
than, the issue here is that you really need to get into the details.
I know, and that's
to
why I say-
understand what's going on.
Excuse me, could I stop the conversation among, the meeting is up here.
I was suggesting that we get that information
Yeah.
into your hands, into town council's hands, so we can move on it immediately instead of
It would
dribbling it in.
probably be helpful to have everything at one time, so that we're not going back and forth, or, oh, wait, one more thing, or something. I would assume that would help analyze the,
Sometimes the public document requests take a little longer than I'd like, but.
Of late, you are getting excellent service on your requests.
yes, at the expense of
Other
other
work.
work that needs to be done in the town. So we're trying to balance those things, which is
I have
also,
been writing checks for my public document request to pay for town services. I have
Okay.
written multiple checks, that's right.
you have, but not, some of it has nicely dovetailed with your request, prompting then town council to ask for the same things, to know what you're getting, thereby then, since we're providing it to them, then the charge hasn't gone to you. So,
That's correct.
there's been some interesting things where
Ellen, have we voted that motion yet?
benefited. I'd like to go back to the other issue about the question about whether the RFP process would be delayed while there are lots of different aspects to be worked out. And I'm not sure that it is a sequential thing. I think there's probably some parallel paths that those could operate on, because the RFP, what it contains, services we're asking for are separate from some of these other issues. So more the limiting factor to me becomes that, we're trying to have the rest of our lives and our jobs. We are volunteers and we're trying to do our best, but, we need to work. I can't spend full time on this. I need to support my family. So that, to me, is the more practical delay, but I think we can still proceed with resolving whatever the other issues are that you are raising, and then with the development and issuance of an RFP. I don't think that one set of things has to be finished before the RFP goes out.
Can I just make a point that I think you might agree with, actually? So, I hear you saying, we're a volunteer board, we don't have time to manage these contracts, to manage employees, to do all of these things. And I couldn't, okay, hang on, let me finish, please, Darrell.
Okay, it's a little
Please,
twist,
please,
but go
please,
ahead and
please let
I'll...
me finish, yes. So I completely agree that you are volunteers, and really, you should get your packages and review them and come to the meetings and make your votes. I completely agree with that. It's my feeling that there's a very serious structural problem here, and that is that the Board of Health should be under the town government, so that you have David Williams, now a professional town manager and a chief procurement officer. So when issues like this come up, you've got a professional to do this work for you. And it's very much my feeling, and I may bring it to try to get a warrant article in this coming season, to have the Board of Health fall under the selectmen so it can be managed professionally. It's not to say the Board of Health won't make the decisions, the important public health decisions that you all care about, and I know you, Darrell, especially care deeply about those public health decisions. But the problem is, when no one's watching the store and the Pine Hill School isn't inspected, that's a public health issue. And I just want to, I think there's beyond the issue with a particular contract that I obviously am exercised about along with other people, there's a structural problem here, and there are many people in the room who know a lot more about our town government than I do. I do not claim to be an expert, and there are a lot of people here know a lot about it. And I have a feeling, if you polled them, they would agree on this one, that we need to have professional management of the Board of Health functions, not the decision-making on public health, but the management of the Board of Health.
Thank you for your comments. We have a motion on the board on the table. It has been seconded. I ask for a vote of the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Now, as to finding a time for another meeting, can we do that now, or should we do that by email?
Well, I think we might want to see whether it's worth having town council attend, and so that would mean contacting them and finding out availability. Does that make sense to get their input right up front?
I'll do that tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else for the board? Any other items for September 3rd
School starts
meeting?
Wednesday, so we'll be around. So.
It does?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Mhm.
Next Wednesday. Any other items for the agenda on the 3rd?
It's a variance hearing. That's pretty much it
A
so far.
variance hearing being added?
Excuse me?
A variance hearing being added to the 3rd, you said?
Yeah, it's already been scheduled.
Okay. But I'm just wondering, in lieu of, certainly on the 3rd, there should be a schedule about, there should be an item for, a possible interim letter of agreement, right?
You're right.
It's got to be on the agenda.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else? Meeting's adjourned.
I think so.
Thank you, Pat.